that we've been working on, and he'll go in the weeds and kind of give you an understanding. So with that, I will pass it on to Hunter.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, there's definitely a big workflow to this, and I'm going to walk you through that, what it looks like. Again, a lot of this workflow, like Jessica mentioned, is to satisfy some of the requirements that the state security has and some of our accessibility standards. But I also want to emphasize while I'm showing this, what's in it for you as survey creators, why this is going to help you make the best survey possible. So I'm going to pop back into our sandbox survey. This is the survey that we built together yesterday. Looks kind of weird because we were showing things like images and things like that. But when I'm ready to publish, I'm going to show a few more things today, but I want to go through the review process. When I'm ready to publish, I'll hit this blue publish button right here. When I hit that button, it's going to pull open my expert review scores so I can look at those recommendations that we talked about. And then it'll ask you to select an approver. You'll only have one option here, so you don't need to remember Jessica. And this might even change. It might change to Iowa approval team or something like that. You'll only have one thing to select here, so go ahead and just select whatever's there, and then you can add notes if you need to, and just to help the approval committee. And then I'll go ahead and hit that request approval button, and then you can hit close on that. So now you'll see up here that I have a pending approval. My survey hasn't been published, but there's a pending approval for it. And then if you go to your email, you should receive an email that looks like this. Up top, this is the subject, and I know this looks kind of messy, but this is the survey ID. Every single survey in Qualtrics has a survey ID that's unique to that survey to help us kind of identify on the back end and help you understand if you do have multiple surveys that you're trying to submit, you can use that survey ID. That survey can be found up here. I know this one's different. I'm using a different email because there is a bit of a delay. But you can find the survey up here in the survey builder. It's part of your anonymous link when you distribute the survey. And it's also found in the survey builder. It's SV _ and then a random series of digits. So when you find that, you'll see that there's a survey ID, and then we've created a ticket at Qualtrics. We eat our own dog food, so we're using the Qualtrics ticketing system to manage all of these survey approval requests. Don't worry about the ticketing system. That's more on the internal side. That just helps us keep things organized so that we can approve your survey as quick as possible. But then we ask you to fill out this Listen, Understand, Act survey. There's a link for it in this email that you'll get. Additionally, there is a preview of your survey. So if you do have multiple surveys and you don't want to look up the survey ID, you can just click on this preview link. It'll show you a preview of the survey, and you can say, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So you'll go ahead and you'll fill out this survey. Here's the survey. Again, we eat our own dog food. It'll give you some instructions. Jessica did a good job of making sure that we followed all of our own rules. So if I click any of these hyperlinks, it'll open in a new tab like we talked about yesterday. So you'll go ahead and start taking the survey. So first thing is, please provide an expected launch date. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my launch date. Let's say I want it to be December 1st. I want this to launch. Obviously plan for some time during, we'll try to get you a better idea of how long it's going to take for the review, but at the moment, we just don't know volume. Are there going to be hundreds of these a day? Are there going to be 2 a day? And so just plan for, plan your surveys in advance so that you can get your approval quickly. So you'll select your launch date. I'll hit next. This is a calendar question, by the way. We talked about this yesterday, but I'll go ahead and hit next here. And then it says, did you receive approval from your agency leaders prior to submitting this project? You can say yes or no. This isn't required because at the end of the approval process, this is going to go to your agency leader anyway, but this might help speed up the process and answer some questions. So if I say, yes, somebody did give me approval, Herb in this case, gave me approval. How was the project approved? We talked about this in a meeting, and we're given approval to create this form. And then you might include maybe your meeting notes, maybe the date of the meeting, include as much information as you can. And that way the survey approval team doesn't have to come back and ask you questions. You'll hit next here. It says which platform features are necessary for your project. So we use the survey builder. Let's say we use translations in here. Again, you don't have to be perfect in here, but try to get as close as possible to what your survey is using. If you're not sure what Text IQ is, there are links on some of these. So you can click those links and it'll open in a new tab and you can see what Text IQ is. Let's go back here. Let's see, I'll just click a few more of these. If you notice, I did not click ticketing. We haven't talked about ticketing that much, but we will on tomorrow's training. I'm gonna hit next. And it says you haven't selected ticketing or any sort of automation to follow up after data collection. And so right now my survey is just collecting data and I don't have any sort of automation. I don't have any sort of workflow to do anything with that data. And so if that's the case, we'll expect that you're able to explain why you're just collecting data and not doing anything with it. And so in this case, I might say, yes, I probably need a ticketing system. Previously, some of our Google Forms, people would fill out those forms and they would go to some state employee's email, and then maybe that person moves on to a different job, and emails keep getting sent to an inactive email, and then we're not helping out our constituents. And so with Qualtrics, we have a ticketing system. Again, we'll talk about this more tomorrow of how to use the ticketing system, but we recommend trying to use the ticketing system instead of just sending an email to a government employee, right? If we use the ticketing system, then we have a way of reassigning it. If I'm out of office and Jim needs to cover the tickets, then Jim can see the tickets, and then you can close tickets. It's kind of like your Service Desk Plus system, but this will help you better serve constituents. And so it's asking that you can click next because, again, your project might not need a ticketing system. But I'm going to go back and say, okay, yes, I do need a ticketing system. You're right, Qualtrics survey. And then it says, okay, enter the email addresses of all the individuals who should be members of the ticketing team. And so I'll enter Brooke's email address. I want to be a part of the team. And then I can just continue entering email addresses. That'll help us set up that ticketing team for you. And then provide any additional comments regarding the ticket system request. I might say something like, I need the tickets to automatically close after 30 days of inactivity. I spelled that wrong. There's only one in. Okay. So, or whatever information you think will be helpful as you're getting your survey out there. Okay, we're going to hit next. Who's the primary audience? Could be constituents, could be internal staff, partner organizations, or other. And then how will it be distributed? We'll talk about this today, about how we distribute the survey. An anonymous link would be a link that I can give to anybody. I can go make a QR code out of the anonymous link and staple it to a telephone pole, and anybody can scan that code and take the survey. We'll talk about query strings a little bit today. I can add query strings to the end of a link to gather additional information about, which telephone pole they're scanning. I can do an email distribution inside of Qualtrics and email distribution outside of Qualtrics. So just click on one of those, and we'll help you get your survey distributed in the best method possible. So I'm just going to say for now, it's just going to be an anonymous link. And then it says, do you plan to publish your survey on the State of Iowa website? So again, if I have an anonymous link, I can post that on the website. People can click it and take my survey. And so I'll say, yes, this needs to go to iowa.gov. That's where it needs to go, because Jessica and team will help you get that on the website and published. Okay, and now it's going to ask about security. Again, we ask these questions so that the approval process goes quicker. If you do the expert review and you're not seeing any of those pop-ups that we talked about yesterday, if I type the word social security number or something with sensitive data in a question, then I can, then I'll get that alert. If I just say no, because I've done my expert review, that's not popping up. I'm not even talking about social security number. All of my questions are multiple choice, so I'm not really worried about accidentally collecting sensitive data. Then I can say no here. Select the type of protected data you are collecting. Maybe you're not collecting any sensitive data. Hopefully that's the case for 80% of surveys. But if you are, just indicate what type of data you are collecting. And then in your own words, describe any sensitive data that you believe may be collected in your survey. So this could be anything, even if you're not sure if it's sensitive data or not, include it in here. You might say, I am collecting the phone numbers of providers. Maybe that's not sensitive data, but you can just say in here, not sure if that is sensitive or not. You can just put in those notes, right? And we'll figure it out for you if it should be sensitive data or not. Then I'll hit next. Okay, this gets to the framework of what Qualtrics is. If you've been on other trainings with me, I've talked about listen, understand, act. These are kind of the tenets of our software and what they do. Listen, this is us collecting the data, right? And I mentioned earlier, if we don't have any sort of a ticketing system or an automation after that survey is sent out, then all we're doing is listening. We're not understanding the data and we're not acting on it. So what's the point of collecting it? So right here, you're going to say what you are trying to capture. I am trying to capture satisfaction data for our program. Obviously, we would like you to be more specific here. I'm not going to type a big paragraph, but please be as specific as you can, because if you're understanding why you're collecting this data, then not only is it going to make the approval process easier, but your survey is going to be better if you have a strategy behind it. Okay, how do you plan to determine the why behind the data? Maybe I'm going to plug my results into to see if there are any statistical anomalies. I should not be spelling in public. All right, anomalies. Something like that. We want to understand what you're going to do with the data. You know, are you just going to look at it and decide what it's telling you? Are you going to build a report out of it? Are you going to build a dashboard out of it? So there's a lot of ways to understand or visualize your data. And then act. You know, once we've collected our data and we understand it, is there any mechanism to implement that feedback? And if you are, that's more for surveys, right? If we're asking for feedback, but if it's a government form, then the act might not be implementing a change. It might be issue a new license, right? I know the state of Florida uses Qualtrics. They fill out a form for their driver's license. Once they fill it out and everything's validated, then they can issue a new license to that person, right? So that's an example of maybe a government form. So issue a new license via a workflow, right? And I'll explain what that workflow is. I've probably already built it out. And that should be it. So basically we're looking for, you know, why you created the survey, what you're doing with the survey, and the security behind the survey, and also that listen, understand, act framework. Jessica, is there anything you want to add before I pop back into the survey about, you know, this form that I just filled out?
No, it seems a little lengthy, but I understand that. But really, some of the data that you're collecting from here will be our future roadmap, where again, return of investment, rate of investment, where we will make leadership executive boards of like, look at the improvement and the efficiency that you have done, which, as you know, is a topic right now. And so we want to be able to provide that way that you're making value. And so again, maybe seems long, but there's value in what we're trying to collect. And what we're doing is reporting it and acting on it as well. So I wanted to give a little bit of the why on some of those questions. We plan to make dashboards and provide transparency and visibility to the agencies and executive leadership once we go from there. So yeah, no, great questions on the chat. Keep going.
Awesome. Okay, so I mentioned before, I want to explain why this helps you as a survey builder. Once you fill this survey out, that ticket is created for the statewide survey review and approval team to look at your survey. They're not just looking at security, they're, like Jessica said, they're looking at methodology, how your survey is set up. I've looked at several surveys that are 20 questions long, and we've been able to, via automations, reduce it down to like 5 questions. Or just tweaking the strategy a little bit, we've been able to reduce the survey down to less questions. Less questions are always better because it reduces survey fatigue or form fatigue. And so, for example, if I'm asking somebody to provide the name of the clinic that they went to, and then next they provide the address of the clinic, and then next they provide the phone number of the clinic. Well, all of that information is probably available, and I can plug that into your survey so that if they just provide the name of the clinic, then we can do some sort of API or a lookup to gather the address and the phone number, right? And so it makes it a better survey taking experience for your respondents, and it cleans up your data so that you don't have somebody, you know, if I am asking for a phone number, they could have a typo, put the wrong phone number in. But we can help you clean up your data. So that's why it's in your best interest to help fill this out, get a second set of eyes on your survey, clean it up to make it better for the respondent and better to you, so that you have easier data to work with. Okay, let's see. Sorry, my Teams stuff is in the way. All right, I'm gonna go back to our survey. Again, we'll keep answering questions about that review process. There will be office hours like Jessica mentioned. But for the remainder of the training today, we just wanted to go back into some of the survey building options that we have, again, to help make your survey as amazing as it can possibly be. So we haven't talked about this, but this is the survey flow down here. This is kind of right under the survey builder. This is how to dynamically change your survey. Let's say in my survey right now, I have this question block. We have 7 questions in it. We've talked about display logic, how if they click on blue, I can say, do you like light blue or dark blue? And then I have more questions that I'm asking. I can close this and add another block. Let's call this additional questions. Okay. Let's say that my target audience really is people who selected red. Okay. So I'm going to add some more questions. Why did you select red? Oh gosh. Why did you select red? And if you remember, we can type in the text, but for this case, I'm going to ask these questions to everybody who selected red, right? So maybe I want this to be a text entry, and then maybe I have a slider question next, right? So I'll have multiple questions inside this block, and they're all questions that I want to ask for Team Red, right? So I'm going to go over here to the survey flow. And within the survey flow, I don't see individual questions. I see question blocks. And so I see my default question block. That was the first one that we created. And then I have my additional questions, which is what we just created. In the survey flow, Qualtrics treats this as gospel, not so much the survey builder. So if I, for example, move this default question block down here. If now you would think that additional questions get asked first and then the default question block, but it really is dependent on what's in here. So it did change it in here, but if I change it back to put my default questions up top, this is what it will obey, right? And it always is going to move from top to bottom. And we've gotten some survey flows that have gotten very, very complex. And so I use this gray line all the time to follow things along. So first of all, we have these additional questions, and I only want that to be asked to people who selected red. So I'm going to hit add below here. We've talked about, these are the different elements that you can add to your survey flow. We talked about question blocks. I have 2 of them right now. So the next one I want to talk about is this branch. So this is where we get into branching logic, which is slightly different than display logic and skip logic. Display logic and skip logic are on the question level. Branching logic is done on the block level. So I'm going to add a branch here, and you'll have to add some conditions. And so I'll say, okay, this is going to branch based off of a question. And I'm going to say, what is your favorite color? If they select red, then I want it to go down this branch. And you'll see this blue arrow right here. That means that it's underneath this branch. So I'm going to take this and move it inside this branch. So again, we're moving from top to bottom. So first thing I hit is this default question block. Next thing I hit is this branch. If I don't meet the conditions, then I'm done with the survey. If I do meet the conditions, then I'll go inside this branch and continue on. So that's the first one, is branching logic. I won't show all of these here. Some of these can get a little in the weeds, but we do have things like a randomizer. If I have like 4 different blocks and I want to randomize those blocks, then I can use this randomizer. And this looks like kind of like a branch. I'll have to put the blocks that I want inside. So I'll have my additional questions and then my default question block, and then fill out the options up here. Randomly presents, maybe I only want them to see 1 of the following elements, and I can say evenly present them. Okay, so right now, as it stands, if I were to launch my survey, my respondents would see the default question block. If they clicked red, then they would see additional questions. And then after that, they would either be presented the additional questions again, or they would be presented the default question block again. So I have kind of a mess going on here, right? So as you go through the block, just kind of be cognizant of how people are moving through your survey. So I'm going to take this randomizer out. I don't want it, and it's going to remove everything beneath it. It's not actually deleting the blocks, it's just removing them from the survey flow. So if I go back to my survey builder, my blocks are still there, my questions are still there. They're just, I just removed the duplicate ones from the survey flow. I don't want them to be shown a second time. Okay, so some other blocks that we have in here. This is one that I use quite a bit, almost always, is an embedded data block. So let's talk about this. We have 3 different types of data that we collect in Qualtrics, 3 main types. One is question data. That one is going to be anything that I ask my respondents. So what is your favorite color? Their answer, red, is question data. So it's a piece of data that they've given to me, right? And I've asked for it, solicited. The other type of data that we collect is metadata. And metadata are going to be things like what time they started the survey, what time they finished the survey, how long it took them to complete the survey. We can even collect things like IP address or their lat longitude location. We can collect, what type of browser they're using. So these are things that we didn't explicitly ask them for, but just by the nature of them taking the survey, we can collect. Those are called metadata. And then lastly, we have embedded data. Embedded data are calculated fields. And so we can assign embedded data fields to people. We can collect embedded data as they start to take the survey. So an example of one, we've asked both of these questions. Maybe let's see what I have in here. Maybe we want to create a category of, here, let me go back to my survey builder so we can remember the questions that we asked in the first place. We have, what is your favorite color? We have, do you like light blue or dark blue? Okay, and then we have this question right here, red is a powerful color. What if we want to tag anybody who says strongly agree to all three of these, and they've decided that green is their favorite color, and I want to tag them, give them some sort of a label like green and agreeable. Then I'll go down here into the survey flow. First thing I'll need to do is add a branch. I'm going to move this branch. I don't want it nested inside another branch, so I'm going to move it down here, and I'm going to add those conditions. So what is your favorite color? Green is selected, and then I'm going to add a condition here. And for this matrix question, I can't remember which one it is. Okay, right here. Red is a powerful color, strongly agree is selected, and blue is a submissive color. Let's see, there's a lot to read here. Strongly agree is selected, and they say yellow is a happy color, strongly agree is selected. So they've met all of our conditions. They've selected green, and they believe that they strongly agree to all of my statements. All right, so this is a very subset of people. I'm going to assign them a field. I'm going to move this embedded data element inside here, and I'll say green and agreeable. And I will say for these fields, we don't use spaces very often. This is kind of behind the scenes type thing. Green and agreeable, I'll set this equal to true, right? And so they'll only go down this branch. My respondent isn't ever seeing this. This is all happening in the back, right? Where I've just been tagging them in the back, and I've said, for whatever reason, I need to tag all these people that are green and agreeable. I need to tag them as true. And so it'll go through this. On the back end, they get tagged, and then the survey ends, right? So that's one way to use embedded data. I do want to show maybe a different way that's a little bit more practical, something that makes sense. So I'm going to add an embedded data element at the top of my survey. Okay, let's say that let's go back to the QR code example that I gave. Let's say that I'm posting this QR code in different buildings. I've posted it in building A, I've posted it in building B, and I've posted it in building C. And I'm asking the same questions to everybody, but I want to understand what building they're coming from. One way to do that, I could have a question in my survey that says, what building are you in? Are you in building A, B, or C? The problem with that is obviously people might be confused about what building they're in. It is adding another question into our survey. And we do a lot of work to eliminate questions from our survey. And so maybe I want to set building as embedded data as something that we collect without asking them for it. And so I'm going to create this field called building, and it says value will be set from panel or URL. The panel is going to be the directory. So for example, if I email out this survey and I have a contact list and it has first name, last name, email, and then maybe it says whether they're enrolled into a program, true or false, maybe I can put that enrollment and it will pull that into my survey so that I can use that to send them down different paths or to display different questions, right? So that's the panel. It just means that it's pulling from your directory or your email list, or it says URL. So this is where we get into what are called query strings. I'm gonna hit apply here. Okay, so it's looking for this embedded data field in the URL. When I'm ready to distribute my survey, I'm gonna go over here to distributions. I'm gonna get a web link. Oh, and Jessica, if you could do me a favor and approve this survey real quick from your account, that'd be great. We're skipping the approval process, just this once.
Okay, yep. Okay, the sandbox is approved.
Perfect. I'll refresh. Okay, so here's my anonymous survey link. Again, I can take this link, turn it into a QR code. I can go staple it on telephone poles. I can go post it on my website. Anyone can go take this. If you type this into your browser right now, you could take this survey. It's not a very good survey, but you could essentially take this survey. So I'm going to copy this survey link. I'm going to open up a new browser. I'm going to paste it. Here I could take the survey link. But before I send this out, or before I make a QR code out of it, maybe I want to add that building. Are they in building A, B, or C? So the way we initiate a query string is just a method of passing information along via a URL. And so we're going to add a question mark. If you ever see a question mark in a URL, that's a query string. So it's initiated with a question mark. The first thing I put is the name of my field. And so in my survey over here, I called it, let's see, let's go back to the survey flow. I called this building with a capital B. It's got to be it's case sensitive. I want to make sure there's no spaces or periods or anything like that. But I've called this field building. And so over here in my URL, I'm going to start with exactly building, okay? Building is equal to building A. And then I can take this whole thing. So what I have here is a link to a survey with a query string on the end that is saying building is equal to building A. And I'm going to turn that into a QR code. If you've used I think there's QR generators all over the place. If you've ever made a QR code before, you can just kind of Google how to do it, and it will turn this into a QR code. Then when I go to scan it, it knows that I've scanned the building A QR code. And then I'm going to change this to building B, and I'm going to go make a second QR code, and that's the one that I paste all over building B. And then I'm going to make a third one called building C, and this is the one that I paste all over building C, right? So I have 3 separate QR codes, but they're all going to the same survey, but each of them is labeled different, building A, B, and C. And so now when I go to my survey, I've told Qualtrics, I've said, okay, go ahead and look up in the URL, see if you can find the query string attribute building, and then give its value to me. It says value will be set from panel or URL. So rather than down here where I hard-coded true in, I'm just going to leave this blank because it'll just return whatever it finds up in the URL. So that's how we can use building. And then I can start branching and say, okay, after they've answered these questions, then if they're in building A, I want you to branch and ask these questions. If they're in building B, go ahead and ask these questions. And all during this time, I have never asked my respondent which building they're in. They've already given me that information just by scanning the QR code. So there's a lot of use cases with this. I try to think of a kind of basic one. But again, the point of me showing you this is to give you the art of the possible. How maybe you're pulling some consumer data or something like that, and you want to branch based off of that without asking the person. So that's what embedded data will do. We use it quite a bit. All right, let me see what other ones I want to do in here. Web service, this is an API. If you need an API to trigger halfway through your survey, this is a little bit more advanced. And so if you do have an API somewhere in your survey, security will probably come through it a little bit more. Make sure that you're doing the right thing. But an example of using an API, maybe a government example that I've seen is a county in Michigan used an in-survey API for refunding people who were doing jury duty. They had a question where people put in their address, and then after that question, they put this web service block. They put in the API information, and it was a Google API. I went to Google Maps, and it put in their address, and it found the distance from their house to the county courthouse, and it calculated the distance and would pop out and say, you know, this is 5 miles from the courthouse. And then their next question, they were able to pipe in, we talked about pipe text, so I'm getting really advanced here. Stay with me. They were able to pipe in that distance, 5.5 miles or whatever it was, and then they could calculate and say, you are owed $5.50 or however much it is as a reimbursement. So that's kind of a government example. Again, it's hard to come up with examples because they're all over the board. That's the whole point, is we have this API so that you can do kind of whatever you need to do. So that in that case was a lookup API. It went over to Google, looked up the distance, and brought it back into Qualtrics. I'm going to delete that one. We don't want an API for this specific one. Okay, we talked about that one. Authenticator, this is another one, just that's good to know if you need people to log into your survey or provide some sort of a password before taking their survey. You might want to add an authenticator to the beginning of it. This one, table of contents, this one is really important, especially if you have a long, not so much for surveys. I don't see this used hardly at all for surveys. This one is more for forms, government forms. Let's say you do have a really, really long government form, and it's just the legislature mandated that it needs to be that long, and you have to ask all those questions, and there's just no way of cutting questions, which I love to cut questions, but let's say we just can't. So we have a huge set of questions, and I have a ton of different blocks. Well, I can use this table of contents, and I can put all of my blocks underneath this table of contents, and anything that falls beneath it will show the respondent a little scene selector while they're taking the survey. So they can say, okay, I'm going to go fill out my demographic information. And then maybe they can go to like a school block. I'm going to go fill out the information about my school. And it helps them kind of navigate through the survey if there are a lot of questions. Again, won't dive too much into it, but just know that that is an option for you. Let's see. Just want to see if there's anything else I want to add. I think that might be it for now. Oh, last thing is an end of survey element. Let's say I've collected enough information, I'm halfway through my survey, and I know that if they've answered a certain way, there's no need for them to continue. I can branch them and then kick them out of the survey, is essentially what this does. This also allows you to dynamically change what happens when they finish the survey. So if I don't want my regular message that says, hey, thank you for filling out this form, somebody will reach out to you shortly. Maybe I want it to do something else, so I can override those settings. Maybe I can provide a different custom end of message survey that says you've been screened out, we don't care about your information, maybe something nicer. Or I can have it redirect to a certain URL. So maybe once they're done taking the survey, I can have it go to iowa.gov/IPERS, because I've identified that that person is maybe looking for IPERS information, right? So I'm just going to redirect them, and it opens up that web page. So it's super helpful, good respondent experience if they're taking right to what they need. And then some other options right here, but that's what the end of survey element does, is just a means of kicking somebody out of the survey or overriding your regular survey options. Okay, that is our survey flow. There is a lot to it. Again, if you do have questions, we've talked about using Google. If you just type in Qualtrics and then type in survey flow, it will give you more information about what you can do. This is another thing that we'll look at as we're reviewing your surveys. We'll make sure that your survey flow makes sense, that you're not putting somebody in some sort of an eternal loop, that you're not accidentally cutting things out. For example, I've seen a lot of people accidentally put a end of survey element right at the top of their survey flow. So what would happen in this case? If this is my survey flow, they get kicked out before they can even take the survey. Survey's over. So if you were to try to take this one, it would immediately say, we thank you for your response. And so we'll take a look at that. We'll make sure that your survey flow makes sense, because I know it can be confusing. But just wanted to show you how the survey flow works. Okay, let's see. I'm not going to save any of those settings. Last few things I wanted to talk about with survey building, and then we'll save some time for some questions, are some of your survey options. If you go over here to survey options, I recommend looking at these and reading through them every single time you're about to publish a survey. You'll have things like the display name and the survey description. These are very important. Jessica is going to ask for them. These get sent over to us as part of the approval process. So you'll want to make sure you're describing the survey. This form is collecting constituent information, right? Put in a description, what you're trying to do. Be okay with this being kind of public facing, because it's part of the accessibility thing. If somebody has a question about what this form is doing, give it a good title. Make sure we know, again, what the survey is generally doing by the title, and then the description should provide some more information. But these are both requirements. You'll see other things like expert review, leave that on. We definitely want that. New survey taking experience, leave this one on as well. This just makes it accessible. So really the only thing under the general tab that you'll be doing is the display name and the survey description. Then come over here to responses. Go through and just read each one of these and make sure the survey, this is just ensuring that the survey is behaving the way you want it to. So for example, back button. Sometimes you'll have a survey or form where you don't want them to be able to go back, or maybe you have so much branching logic that going back is just going to cause issues, and so you want to turn this off. But for the most part, you'll want a back button so that people can go back and change their answer if they need to. Allow respondents to finish later. If you'd like to kind of save their progress and let them come back an hour later, as long as they're on the same computer or browser, they'll be able to finish later. You can show custom error messages. If they skip a question, you can turn these on and it'll give you different messages that you can write yourself. Incomplete survey responses. Sometimes we don't think about what happens. We just assume that everybody who's taking your survey is going to make it all the way through the journey, and then we collect their data. That's not hardly ever the case. There's always somebody who doesn't complete the survey. And so you need to tell Qualtrics what you want it to do with those incomplete responses. Do you want to record them? Typically for surveys, we want to record them, because for surveys, any data we can get is great. But for forms, if they don't finish the form, then we probably can't do whatever task they need us to do. And so maybe for forms, we'll want to delete them. We don't want it unless it's complete, right? And then you can say, okay, how much time has to pass for it to be considered incomplete. You can change when the survey is available, if they get a message for being inactive. So go through all of these settings. Next one is security. Is this available to everyone, or should it be invite only? Do you need it to be password protected? Add a referral website URL. This one actually flies under the radar a little bit, but this one's kind of important. If you are posting your survey on a website and you think it's important, maybe it's behind a login wall and it's important that people are coming from that website. By turning this on, this, again, a lot of them are anonymous links. By turning this on, they have to come from the website that you specify in order to take the survey. So if I somehow get the anonymous link and I send it over to Jessica and I say, hey, Jessica, take this survey for me, she won't be able to do it because she didn't come from the correct website. She clicked on my iMessage, right? So she won't be able to take it. So this is just a way to secure your survey a little bit if you need to. Preventing multiple submissions. Just depends on your survey. Again, sometimes people do need to fill it out multiple times. Bot detection, if you want it to look for bots, I usually recommend turning this on because it doesn't change the respondent experience. It only adds that bot question if you add it in your survey builder over here. But this one, Qualtrics will just look and see if it kind of looks like bot behavior based on the metadata. You can do a survey scan. You can prevent people from being able to search it via Google. So this just blocks it from being optimized for search engines. Uploaded file access indicate who should be able to view files uploaded by respondents. This is set to default only if you have access to the survey. So if you are creating some sort of a public dashboard, then you'll need to change this. And then lastly, anonymized responses don't record IP address, location, and contact info. Again, just depending on your survey, if that's not something you should be collecting, then go ahead and turn this on and Qualtrics won't collect. Okay, last thing, we're not going to talk about post-survey because we're going to use that for workflows. That will be tomorrow's discussion. This is what we used to use, but this is kind of getting deprecated. Workflows are so much more powerful, and we'll have a whole hour to talk about those. And then lastly, scoring. This is more if your survey, a lot of people use Qualtrics to quiz people. And so if you need to give them a score, you can go through and for each one of your questions, you can say, okay, A is correct for question 1, for question 2, C is correct. And you can assign scores, give it weights. So at the end of the survey, Qualtrics can say you got a 9 out of 10. So if you do need to use Qualtrics for quizzes, you can check out this option down here. Other survey options are quotas. We don't use a ton of these in government, but if you do need to add a quota, like I only want 100 people to fill out this survey, you can get really detailed with this, where you can say, I only want 100 people who have selected green to continue on in the survey, or I only want 50 people who selected yellow. So you can get kind of granular with this, but I won't dive into it because it's not a super common feature, especially in government. Translations, however, this is a very common feature in government. If you do need to provide something in Spanish, for example, for your constituents, you can add a translation service. So that's going to be found down here. Again, won't dive into it. This is something that you can Google and say Qualtrics translations. It'll give you a help page on exactly how to add translations. We recommend using a real life translator, but you can also, there is a Google integration if you want to use Google Translate.
Hunter, can I just interrupt on that?
Yeah.
Forms especially should always be reviewed by a translator because that can really affect the form, but it can reduce your cost. You can always have it be translated in here and then send it off to the translator to give it accurate vocab and information. But this is a really nice feature that you can have that option to toggle between languages for them. For some of the like workforce development, that's important to them for certain forms, but it is a tool that we have available. Yep.
The reason we like this tool is, like Jessica said, is to maybe cut costs for your translators. So many times people just send the questions over and then they'll say, oh shoot, I forgot to send my translator all the responses. And so red, yellow, green, blue, those weren't translated. Or maybe you have a message in your survey, like a custom message, and you didn't send that over. This brings in everything that people will see, and so that you won't miss anything. So you can send this over to your translator, and it's very exhaustive. Translators like it because it has exactly what they need to translate and where they need to translate it. So yeah, people who are doing live translations are very happy with this. It makes it very easy. Okay, I think that's all I'm going to show. Again, tomorrow we're going to go over workflows. That's what actions or automations are happening after they take the survey. But by now you've done 2 hours of survey building, so you should know how to at least build a survey. There's a lot of difficult things to understand about survey flow, but at least you have an idea that the survey flow is there, and if you need help, you should hopefully know where to find it.
Yeah, I was wondering if we are used to work with versions of data, versions of templates of code, and if this is a template we're using for a certain survey? Can we reuse the forms? How can we see the saved collections of data for between different versions? That's what I was thinking.
Good question. Do you mean different if I have two different surveys that are similar, or do you mean if I've made changes to a certain survey and I want to see a version history?
Changes to the survey.
Changes. Okay. So you're going to click on this tools drop down right here, and go down here to versions and click on view version history. This will show all of the changes that I've made. And let's say I've really blown it and I changed something in the survey flow and my survey is just not working anymore and I can't figure out why. I can go to the last time it was published. If you see this cloud icon right here, that means that it was published. And I can restore this version. I won't restore. I'll click on view in the survey builder and I can see what it looked like at that time at 3:10 p.m. right? I can go check out the survey flow and see what changes were there. And then if I need to restore it, I can, or I can export it if I want to maybe compare the previous version with the new version. Does that answer that question?
Sure. So what does the export results into an Excel file or?
You can export it into a PDF or into Word. Or if you just click export, if you click the drop down, that's PDF or Word. If you just click export, then it will give you that QSF file. I don't know if you can see this. Oh yeah, you can. A QSF file, we talked about this very briefly yesterday, but a QSF file is a text readable file. It's readable by Qualtrics, and so if I upload this into Qualtrics, a different account, then it will recognize that it's a Qualtrics survey and it will be able to pull out the questions and things like that. But it's also a text file. And so if you want to put the text by text of what the survey is, I've seen some people plug it into ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that and say, find me the differences from these two text files. Then it can identify those differences for you.
Thank you.
One other thing that we have received question on, especially like the Department of Ed had a survey that the executive leadership needed to review it, and sometimes paper is the best way for those types of people. And so what you can do, I think we talked about this yesterday, but can you go to tools for me, Hunter? Sometimes they just want to see the PDF version as well. Oh, you probably need to get out of that view. But there is, I know we talked about this briefly yesterday, but this is a true case where you can export it to a Word or print it as a PDF and, you know, attach it to your executive leadership because they might want to see it in a different format just to kind of know what you're asking. Sometimes that is a good feature for some executive levels. Sometimes they don't want to get into the weeds of it all. They just want to see what you're asking. So that's another option as well.
If I have 100 people fill this survey out, and then I come back out here and I say, when I add another color, like pink, and another 50 people fill it out, is there a way to tell which 100 people had which colors to pick from, and which ones had the other colors to pick from?
Good question. I would recommend if you foresee that you need to do that, you can add an embedded data element. And so I would add pink down here, right? I know they need that option. And then I would go to the survey flow, and at the very beginning, I would add a new field called pink, and I would say true or something like that. Then that marks every single answer with this new field called pink. You can call it whatever you want, and it marks it as true. Whereas my historical ones will be empty because the field pink didn't exist. So that's just kind of a way to tag in history when you do make a change. Again, we're doing that with embedded data, hard coding it in. I have one more thing I want to add, but does that answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to add this just as a warning. If I go in, let's say you're like, okay, I don't need red anymore. I want that to be pink. And this has been something that I didn't quite understand, but there is a reason for it. It seems like there's not a reason for it. But if I change that red to pink, it will retroactively change all of the question data in the past. All 100 responses will get changed to pink. Because it's done based off of the response. This particular number 3 right here has a very specific ID tied to it on the back end. And so if that's the case, if I want to replace red with pink, I shouldn't do that. I should add pink right here. And then if I need to get rid of red, we recommend, we recommend putting display logic on it. Right here, display logic, and adding some logic. We've talked about question data, but you can use this true false and just say false. Is it displayed? False. Like it just, for no matter what, it's not going to get displayed to anyone. You can tell that there's display logic on there. So now red will never again be seen, but it still maintains all of my historical data. And I've added pink as an option as well. Same thing if I decide, hey, I want pink to be at the beginning and yellow to be at the end. Don't go in here and type pink unless I'm still just editing my survey and I haven't launched it yet. I'll want to move yellow down by clicking this drop down and just click move down because I want it to the bottom. And for pink, I want that at the top now. I'm going to say move up. So I'm glad you asked that question because it reminded me that there is something kind of funky with our retroactive data. Again, there's a reason for it, but just you should be aware of it so you're not accidentally changing 100 pieces of data.
And as a former Google Forms creator and probably other platforms, it's not a normal practice. So again, this is why training is really important, why this is a big change, right? Because you could really change your data the wrong way. So we'll definitely leave this portion in the video, but this is just one of those things that is just a different mindset as you go. So that's only if it's published and you've got data. It's fine to change all you want in your editing and curating. And Hunter will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. But it's once you collect the data and you're live and all of a sudden you notice you like forgot a multiple choice question and you move it all around, you're going to break it. However, maybe you did misspell the word. It's going to be okay because the word meant the same. So it's all case by case scenarios. And we want to be very cautious when we do make those changes and understanding the process. Great call out. Any other questions?
Does that only apply to multiple choice questions, or does that also apply to like drop downs or sliders or anything else?
Good question. Yes, it would apply here because this is kind of like an answer. So matrix questions, it would. Drop downs, it would, because a drop down is a multiple choice. For sliders, I might have to get back to you on that one. I've never had that question before. I've never had someone needing to change a slider question. So let me get back to you. But I think I've only ever seen this issue with multiple choice. So that's where it's most commonly the most common pitfall.